What's up, Christian caregiver? It's Lizette, your dementia coach, and you are listening to Dementia Caregiving for Families. It's the show where I teach Bible-believing Christians how to make Alzheimer's and dementia care easy by giving you hope and help so you can create moments of joy and make memories together. In today's episode 129, we have a very special guest by the name of Kitty Norton, who has made a documentary called Wine, Woman, and Dementia, and it is well worth watching. And it is very important that you listen to the end of the episode where you find out how you can watch this documentary, because we have timed this episode with the longest day, which is the Alzheimer's fundraiser for Alzheimer's disease, which is the 21st of June. So this documentary will be available for you to watch as a fundraiser for the Alzheimer's Association, and the information is in the show notes as well as at the end of the episode. But it is very, very well worth the very low admission fee to actually watch this documentary. It is super funny, and it is very well done and well written. And if you haven't yet joined one of my Ask the Dementia Coach segments, the next one is coming up. It is June the 20th. And I would love for you to sign up to actually take one of the slots. I only have 4 or 5 people in the room. So please go ahead and register for the Ask the Dementor segment. That link is also in the show notes. And without further ado, let's go to our episode with Kitty Norton, Wine, Woman, and Dementia, how one woman found community. Have you recently found out someone you love has dementia? Struggling to wrap your head around how to be a Christian caregiver? Searching for answers by joining countless Facebook groups but find them toxic? Learning how to cope with dementia feels difficult, but learning a Christian caregiving worldview can be easy. Hey, brother and sister in Christ, I'm Lizette, occupational therapist, pastor's wife turned dementia coach, and a daughter of dementia. In this podcast, you will learn the truth that the way to make dementia care easy is your faith. Knowing that a loving God has decreed this hard providence in your life makes all the difference. Here you will gain skills. You will be challenged by what God says in His Word about caregiving, and you will learn exactly what dementia is and is not. Find clarity and certainty from God's Word so you have perseverance for this journey. Use science-backed solutions and biblical principles to redeem your time. Praying this blesses you as we dive into dementia from a Christian perspective. Let's glorify God despite dementia. Well, welcome everybody. We have a very special treat today. We have a guest by the name of Kitty Norton, and Kitty has a very special movie that she has made, produced, acted in, all of the above, related to caregiving. And part of the reason I reached out to her was because of the name of the movie, which is Woman, Wine, and Dementia. And the reason for it connecting in my brain is because we have a woman, wine, and dementia situation in my life, but it was a different type of woman, wine, and dementia situation that Kitty was talking about. So I'm very excited to have our guest here today. Kitty, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself as an introduction?
Absolutely. And thank you, Lizette, for having me. I do want to correct you. It's Wine, Women, and Dementia.
Wine, woman, and dementia. Well, that's a little subtle thing.
Yeah. So I my sister and I started taking care of our mom, who was living with vascular dementia, after my dad died in 2016. And mom had been diagnosed in 2010. So she was about midway into her progression. My sister, I was living down in LA at the time. I had started a new career a few years earlier in post production. So I was working on as an assistant editor on some NBC shows and doing really well. I was trying to get to an editor's chair in another year or two, but dad died and it was time to come home and take care of mom. So mom and dad have a split level. So my boyfriend and I moved into the basement, which, he was super thrilled about that.
I'm sure.
And my sister, who lives on the Oregon coast, she would come, 2 or 3 days a week and take her turns with mom, so I could have a break from it. We did that for 5 years. Mom died in 2016. The last 2 years of mom's life, we actually did bring in one more person, which I always teased mom about. It's like, you need a team of experts getting you through this, lady, but during that time, I also wrote a blog. So
Mhm.
I needed something creative to do and something that was kind of my own. So I started writing about our dementia adventures. And it was all just personal stories, the good stuff, the bad stuff, the funny stuff. And I started making these online friends all over the world. And 5 of them in particular became very, very important to me. So when mom died, I decided I wanted to go meet these people. And I thought, well, if we just sit around and have conversations about what we've been through, that might be really helpful for other caregivers.
Mhm.
And that's how it kind of morphed into a movie from there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
So
it's
that's what made you think you could actually make the movie because your background was already in film, or just the whole, I need a healthy way to process what I've been through?
Well, there's several reasons why I thought I could make the movie. One of them is from Portland, Oregon. We're a very DIY town, and we
Mhm.
always have been. So nobody tells us we can't do things because nobody pays any attention to us. So we just do them. So there was that. I had that background. I also, yes, my post-production experience. So I knew a lot of what happens on the end of production. So I knew I wasn't starting from square one, and I had some experience. And also, even before I changed careers, I had worked in a lot of nonprofit theaters. Uh,
Um,
so I was always around wonderful, incredible, amazing stories. From Shakespeare to A Raisin in the Sun to just playwrights from just the whole span of the human experience. So I knew how to tell a story. And I knew if I hired other people who knew even better how to tell a story, they could help me get it to where it needed to be and where it was something worth putting out in the world. So,
so why do you call it the dementia movie you didn't know you needed?
well, I didn't at first until we started going to festivals and doing community screenings, which that started last spring. So I have been privy to the experience that people are having when they watch the film. And I also know a lot of the caregivers who come were like, oh my gosh, at the end of the film, they're like, this is the last thing I wanted to do today, but my friend made me come. And I am so glad I came to see this because now I know I've been seen. I don't feel so alone anymore. I do actually feel celebrated. I feel like what I do is important and worth hearing about and talking
Mhm.
about, so it's like, I just thought about that maybe 3 or 4 months ago. I'm like, this is like the movie nobody thought they needed,
Mhm.
And all of a sudden as a caregiver, you're like, wow, okay. Now I feel like people get it. I feel like
Mhm.
I get what other people are going through. It just seems to have been very important to
Mhm.
the people who see it.
So what it sounds like to me is you made the movie because it was something that you needed, and then the unintended consequence was that it's actually a movie for what other people need.
Hey, Dementia Caregiving for Families listeners, it's Anna Gelbman Edmonds from the Navigating in Reverse podcast. I want to let you know about my podcast, where we focus on the caregivers. Transitioning into the caregiving role often results in a parental role reversal as the adult child begins making many decisions for the aging parent. We cover topics that will help you navigate your caregiving journey and plan for your own golden years. The link to episode number 32, What Happens When You Don't Plan Ahead, is in the show notes. You're listening to Dementia Caregiving for Families, and here's your host, Lisette Cloutier.
I mean, I intended it to be a film that other people needed. The first time I saw it all completed, I thought, this is the movie I wish I would have seen in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
This is the movie that I wish could have given me some heads up on what was coming down the road. So I've always intended it to be that. I just didn't realize it was going to go above and beyond that.
Okay. So can I ask a clarification question? So you mentioned your mom passed away in 2016.
No, 2021. I'm sorry. I misspoke.
Okay. So she passed away in 2021, and you started making the movie shortly after that?
Yeah. Well, I started planning the road trip because the 5 people I went to visit were all around the U.S. And that's when I started thinking about maybe bringing a film crew if these conversations were going to be what I thought they were going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And Seattle was the first one we did, and we did that about a month prior to the production, the big tour, which happened in September. So Mom died in March.
Okay.
I started thinking about this. By the time we'd gotten about the beginning of summer, I knew I wanted to try making this a documentary. So in August, the 1st of August, we went up to Seattle and did Allison, because, that's only 3 hours away from me in Portland. And when I came home with that footage and watched it, I knew I had something to make. I knew it was going to be worth pursuing. So before I went and paid everybody to go a whole month around the country with me, I thought, let's try one first.
Yeah.
And just make sure. Yeah.
So of all of the people that were in the documentary with you, all of their loved ones have since subsequently passed, correct? They were all on the other side of the journey, or were there people who were still in the midst of it?
Yeah, still were and still are to some extent. So Allison up in Seattle, her husband died in 2019. Grace and Ashley in Chicago, their mom was just about 4 years into her diagnosis, I believe, and she's still living with dementia. She has Alzheimer's. My friend Roseanne, her mom had died about a month after my mom. And then Veronica down in Texas, her grandmother had died, but she was also taking care of her mom, and her mom, Linda, is still living.
Oh,
and
wow.
Matt and Ashley are a married couple who each had a parent with a type of dementia. Both their parents died within the year of us being there. So,
okay. Well, I will tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed watching it.
thank you.
It was one of those. It's hard when you've been in the dementia space for so very, very long, that sometimes you feel like I have a lot of head knowledge about it. Yes, I have heart knowledge too in helping my parents, but I'm just one person, one unit. And so you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And watching the entire movie and the journey that people have been through was very helpful to me from an emotional perspective, which I wasn't anticipating. Because one of my big pet peeves right now is, 20 years ago, we weren't really talking about dementia, Alzheimer's, all of these different types of things happening. It's been around for a long time. It's not that it hasn't been there. We had a lot of people in the nursing homes. I worked in nursing homes Most of the patients that I worked with had some form of cognitive loss or dementia. So, there's that component, but they're starting to talk about it like in subplots in television programs and things like that now, but the narrative is all the same. It's like there's this one little script that somebody has come up with that this is what a dementia journey looks like. And so it really irks me from that perspective, because there's such a variety of ways that every family journeys through this, the same but different, so seeing all of the variety in the documentary of where people were. It wasn't like everybody was in an institution or everybody was at home. There was a nice variety, as well as the variety of types of caregivers, not just daughters or spouses, but a combination of a variety of people, grandchildren. So it really, and that's one of my big things related to dementia and dementia caregiving is we do, you mentioned the whole team concept, right? Mom, we now have a team. Right?
You need a team of experts, lady.
You need a team. And that's the thing, right? Every caregiving family needs a team.
Right.
But we don't necessarily talk about it, or they don't think about it, or it's like, I can do it on my own. Well,
we tried to do this, and I think we were very successful. I did not want any on the nose stuff in this film. And community is a huge theme in this film.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't talk about it. We don't talk about how to get it. We just show through us coming together 5 people who had never, ever met each other in person, so community is a big thing. The tragedy narrative, which I don't know what you perceive as the cookie cutter narrative, but I perceive it as the tragedy narrative.
I 100% agree. And that is I'm like, time out.
Yeah, I'm so tired of those films. And not to say that there isn't tragedy, because there is, but we're caregivers and we cannot live like that for the 5 or the 10 or the 20 years that this is going to go on. And we're trying to help our person.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to survive, or we're going to ditch the person altogether because we need to save ourselves.
Right.
So for me, when I started writing the blog, it was to kind of say, hey, all this media I'm seeing or reading, or it's all about how horrible this is, and it's such a tragedy, and oh my God, everybody cries and everybody dies in the end. It's like, well, yeah, it's dementia. Everybody dies in the end.
Well,
but there's a
life.
lot.
Everybody dies in the end.
There's a lot of laughter. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of tears, and it's just life. It's a really hard life, but you can get through it. If this ding dong can do it, you can do it. And that's one thing that I wanted the film to tell people some of the really funny stories.
Yeah.
Like some of the crazy thing that dementia people get up to. It's hilarious. And if you can find that hilarity for yourself and for them, you guys are going to have a better day.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
A better week, and maybe even a better month.
Yeah.
It's just, so I agree. Every single time I see a new film, I'm excited, or I read a new book, I'm like, maybe this will be something that's a little different. And
it's,
yeah.
No, well, yours is for sure. Absolutely. But I just recently met with one of my clients, and we were I was asking her, because I do dementia coaching with families and clients. And my entire mindset and view is, how do we change the narrative? How do we change the narrative? I'm not discounting, like you said, that it isn't difficult or that there aren't challenges, because there certainly are.
Oh, it's the toughest thing I've ever done.
But life is challenges. Like if you lose a child, that's hard. If you find out you have cancer yourself, That's hard. Life is not all, you know, sunshine and roses, but one of the things that she said to me that was an unintended, not thought through consequence of the coaching was, she's like, the thing I got back was my joy with my mom, joy that we can still do things, make memories, live well, and not just constantly be in that narrative that's out in the greater community. And I 100% blame the healthcare system for that.
I think it's also a good narrative to raise money. And the money needs to be raised. We need to find
what? I thank you for that, because I haven't even thought about it in that way. But you're right.
I just think we're beaten over the head with it. And as caregivers, it's not helping us.
No.
I had to go through what you're describing that your client was going through. I had to go through that. The first, I don't know, probably 6 months that I was full-time on mom, I treated her as just like this precious little porcelain doll. If she was upset, then, oh my gosh, I had to do somersaults to get her to be happy. And I finally had to say, okay, this is not sustainable.
No.
I am at a stress level of here, and dementia is not going to make mom happy every day. In fact, more days it's going to make her miserable. So how are we going to figure out that so many times she's miserable and you might get a smile out of her, and that might be the best you can do today. Okay. So let it go. Like, this is still her life, and she still has this journey to do. If you believe in God, if you believe in fate, this was supposed to be the way she dies.
Mm-hmm.
So let's give her as much life in it as possible and understand that we don't control that she does, and that dementia does. And we're punching it in the face as often as we can, but we're not going to land all the blows.
Right. I will tell you, one of the things I enjoyed the most about the movie is the humor.
Yeah, good.
There's a lot of humor in it, and dementia can be, if you choose to just reframe it in your brain, it can be very funny. Not funny in the sense of belittling the person.
Correct.
But funny in the sense of, some crazy stuff gets done.
It does. It does. And sometimes it's hilarious. And sometimes joining mom in her world was like having a play date. It was like, as creative as I can be, or as if I can find humor in this situation, I might get a smile. I might even get a giggle out of this lady who's pretty pissed off right now. So, let's go there. Let's use that humor. And that's the humor that my parents gifted us with. So for us, it was very natural to go there. But, like I said, that first 6 months, I just felt like, oh, that's making fun of her. That I was so pushing down who we were and who mom was, because of my perception of now how this should be, because it's tragedy,
Right. Yeah.
And I had to let go of that. And I want other people to know, if tragedy is working for you, keep with it. If you find whatever works for you in dementia, keep doing it. But if it's not working, here's some people who did it a little differently, and you may find this helpful for your own journey.
Yeah. Do you feel alone and isolated and need a little bit more help and support in this journey? Sign up for our next Ask the Dementor monthly meetup, where we will come together. Less than 10 people are allowed to sign up at a time, so we can have fellowship, where we can answer questions, where you can get some Christian guidance and just an awareness that you are not alone on this journey. I really want you to be able to connect with me. I want to be able to answer your specific questions. So if you're struggling, if you're tired, if you're overwhelmed, if you're stressed, if you just need a little bit of help, sign up for the next Ask the Dementor monthly meetup. The
I
link
have
is
never,
in the show notes below.
in the 31 years of working with hundreds and thousands of people over the years with dementia and their family caregivers, I've never found anybody that the tragedy narrative is working for.
Yeah. I
I just, and the people that come to mind who were the burnt out, freaked out, I can't do this, woe is me and doom and gloom caregivers were the ones who mostly had absorbed that tragedy narrative. And the caregivers over the years, that came through it with a healthy life on the other end, healthy mindset, healthy outlook on it, were those that did not prescribe to that tragedy narrative. And so, if somebody really is in that tragedy narrative and it's working for them, I beg them to reach out to me because I've never seen it. Like legitimately, I have never ever seen it.
Yeah, I agree with you, but again, I'm not an expert. I mean, you definitely have more experience and education than I do. I'm not an expert on dementia. I'm an expert on how I got my mom through dementia,
Mhm,
how we did it seemed to be helpful for other people, and it
mhm,
especially through the blog, I connected with other people who were already also using these tactics.
mhm.
And that's what I wanted people to see. I'm not saying that this is going to make it easy and it's not going to make you a perfect caregiver. I was a terrible caregiver at times. Terrible. And I talk about that in the film. It's like, okay, if I'm going to do the fun stuff, I'm also going to put the terrible stuff in it. And
Right.
this girl right here was awful at
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Oh, I've had my moments,
Yeah.
and I'm still like very humbled at times that I'm like, yeah, I got to go to my group and tell them, I'm not perfect. I done stepped in it, I mean, but that's life. That's
Right.
how
And this is
we.
a really tough situation, really tough. So, yeah, I think any end of life journey and you are helping that person, and like you said, if it's your child, if it's your spouse, if it's whatever the disease is, this is the hardest stuff you're probably ever going to do in your life.
Mhm.
So don't think that this movie is going to make anything easy for you. This movie would just show caregivers there's another way through it if you want to give this a shot. Or
Mhm.
maybe just seeing a different way through it makes you think, open your brain to know what's going
Mhm.
to work for you. And maybe none of this does. Maybe you watch
Right.
the film and go, okay, now I absolutely know how I don't want to do it.
But that's also helpful though.
Good.
You
I hope so.
Like, knowing what you don't wanna do is also helpful
Yeah.
because, there's so much information out there, and sometimes people are just trying to figure out what's gonna work for them, and so, even if somebody watches the film and says, "Yeah, I can't do it that way," but then it narrows down, they don't have another 500 things they have to try
Right.
before they before they get to the one that will work for them. Are you still keeping up with the blog?
No, in fact, I don't think I've done a post in probably close to a year. I keep it up because I know it's still helpful for some people. I still get notes every once in a while from somebody like, "Hey, I just found your blog." I'll recommend that they start in the archives so that they can read, the way the trajectory of when it happened. But I just don't have time.
Mhm,
I thought putting a film together was gonna be the hardest part, and that was difficult, but getting it out into the world is a lotta hustle all the time, and
mhm.
I just don't have time to write much anymore.
So tell me, how are we getting it out in the world?
Yeah, so community screenings have been really popular. So anybody for your community can go to the film website at Wine, Women, and Dementia and sign up to host a community screening. You license the film. You can decide if you want me or one of the cast members to attend, either in person or virtually. So that's really fun. We've finished with festivals, so that's over. We're doing a lot of screening. I do a lot of virtual screening windows. So we have one coming up. We did one for Mother's Day, so I wanted to do one for Father's Day too. And it's also the longest day of the year, which is the big Alzheimer's Association fundraiser. So on June 14th, on Friday, that's Father's Day weekend, the film will be available to watch online. You can go to the website to get the link to do so, and you just register, pay your $5 for the ticket, pay more if you can. I'm going to take out the processing fees for the platform and the Stripe processing fees, but everything else goes to the Alzheimer's Association. And you have that week to watch the film. So I think it's a full 7 days that the film will be available.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And then another thing that we are really excited for is we just found out last month that we've been accepted for PBS distribution. So we're cutting the film down to an hour. So that will make it really attractive for programmers, PBS programmers, to pick up and put in the lineup. We're going to have it to them in time to have our debut for November's National Family Caregiver Month. So I'm over the moon because that just took our ability to get to thousands of people up to millions of people. And that's huge. So, and I'm also still have plans throughout the next year to continue to start going worldwide with it. So getting to more, LinkedIn is a really good place to make connections with people all over the world who are working in aging and caregiving. So I intend to keep following up and making those partnerships. And, we're going to have a Malaysia rollout this month, and, we're going to go to Japan this month. And, so I want it to get to whoever wants to see it.
What a ministry this is.
It's driving me crazy.
Oh, the ministry's driving you crazy?
I'm like, I do nothing but work on this film now. I need to do a little respite from the film sometimes. I'm a little overwhelmed, but I think once we get it delivered to PBS, I'll be able to settle down a little bit. But
oh, wonderful. So tell people again how they can connect with you, where they can find the film, and then I'm going to have to figure out if I can do a local screening here in Greenville. I don't know if it's been here in Greenville yet. So
it's incredible to watch it with a group of caregivers, and it doesn't matter if there's 10 in the room or 100. It's that energy when you're sitting next to somebody you don't know, but they get it. They're laughing too. They're crying too. It's really powerful. Okay. Yes. Wine, Women, and Dementia is the website. And on it, you can access the trailer. You can go to the screenings page and see all the screenings. We've got a bunch coming up in Wisconsin for June, and find out where the virtual screening, how to access the virtual screening. We don't know who's going to pick it up for PBS yet, but as soon as we do, that'll also go on that page. Yeah, join the newsletter at the website, because newsletter people get the first information on all of the events and opportunities to see the film.
Well, for anybody who is listening today, or within the week that this comes out, because this episode will be coming out the Monday before the week. We timed it for that. I really, really, really want you to go watch this movie. It is well worth spending. It's not even super long.
87. It's the dementia movie you didn't know you needed.
It's the dementia movie you didn't know you needed, and especially if you're in the midst of the journey. But even more, if you are on the other end of the journey, I think it's a helpful movie to watch from a cathartic perspective. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
for a lot of people, it can be very cathartic to know. And for people who don't know what that word is, like an emotional release.
I have to look up words every day. I'm so glad other people don't know what some of them mean.
It's a good word to almost like cleanse you from an experience. I'm not a technical definition by any means, but it is very therapeutic to process what you've been through. So I really would recommend people watch it.
I
I
do
will
too.
give I will give people a little bit of a teaser. You got to just ignore some of the language because that can be difficult for some people, but it kind of surprised me. But once it happened, I'm like, oh, yeah, well,
There's a lot of naughty words in dementia.
yes.
I think it was Teepa Snow. I got to go to Teepa Snow like the first year that I was on Full-Time Mom and see her at a conference. And I remember her saying, hey, your little pastor's wife mother is going to drop the F-bomb and you're just going to need to get used to it. You know? I was like, I think she's right. My mom was very religious and goodness gracious, she was quite colorful towards the end of her life.
It definitely happens. It doesn't happen with everybody, but it does happen for sure. Absolutely. And I hate that it's probably going to be me if or when it happens, because my parents were not very discerning growing up with language. And so, if you are going back through that whole process, that is my default. That I work very hard to have a cleaner language now, but I definitely could see that would be, unfortunately, something that's going to happen to me, but not everybody has that happen. It's
Right.
just interesting.
We were kind of a rough and tumble family too. So my sister and I have some colorful language, but in the end, it's just words, and
Yeah.
I think it's worth seeing. And I hope you join us for the Father's Day weekend and the Longest Day fundraiser week, because that's just really exciting. And I don't know about you guys, but I always get upset when I haven't given to Alzheimer's Association, because while they haven't found a cure yet, they're the biggest organization in the world searching for one.
Right.
So I love to make sure I get money to them every year. So this is a way to make your donation
go a little further, even. Yeah, for sure. Well, Kitty, thank you so much for being here. So when I write my book about women, wine, and dementia, yours is Wine, Woman, and Dementia.
Now we don't have any trademark issues with each other.
There you go. No, ours is actually a really interesting story. I do need to do a separate episode on how I weaned my parents off of alcohol.
Yes, yeah, because these are issues that a lot of caregivers face.
Yeah.
That was something that we did not touch on. Of all the topics we hit, we didn't hit like when your person just has really big health issues to start with, and then dementia hits. So yeah.
So, but yet again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for letting me watch it. It was awesome.
And thank you to everybody who's watching. I appreciate you being here.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me today, Success Seeker. I pour my heart and soul into this program to serve you. You can serve me by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and join our free Facebook group, Dementia Caregiving for Families. It's a positive and proactive space to navigate dementia caregiving together. Get practical tools and find support, but without the verbal vomit. Be a part of our community where we seek to find peace of mind and ease despite the dementia diagnosis. So join today and see you next time as our flight takes off.